We all know that when you go to the petrol pump and you fill up, most of the money you're paying goes directly to the government in the form of various taxes. When you recharge your electric car at home, the tax on your electricity is almost nothing. For an EV driver, that's been a very nice little way to save some cash. But that tax situation won't last forever. So here's the deal. When you fill up at a petrol station, some of the cash you're paying is in the form of VAT, or value added tax, or VAT, and some of it is in the form of fuel duty. Here's how it breaks down. At the time I'm filming this, the average price of unleaded is around 152.75 pence per litre for petrol. The fuel duty they apply to petrol is 52.95 pence per litre. Then on top of that, there's VAT, which is a form of sales tax, and that's at 20%, which they charge on both the fuel price and the duty, which is about 30 pence. In other words, about 70 pence in every litre of unleaded is tax, or just over half. Now, guess the fuel duty on electric cars. Right now, it's nothing, nada, zero. You still pay VAT at 20% if you charge up from a public charge point, but only VAT at 5% if you recharge at home. So if you got an EV, you're probably feeling quite smug right now because all those petrol guys and girls are forking out loads of money and you're not. But wipe the smug off your face just a second, because that's probably gonna change. I can't tell you when, but I can tell you why and possibly how. And I can also tell you that when it does, it might be a bitter pill to swallow. Okay, let's go back in time first. When EVs were first made available in the UK, the government offered plenty of incentives to make them more appealing. First, there was the plug-in car grant, where they literally gave you money if you bought an electric car, up to 35% of the price of an EV, up to the value of £5,000 for a new car, or up to £8,000 towards the cost of a new van. They wanted to get the ball rolling. And there were other incentives like free parking in some places in big cities and exemption from VED, that's vehicle excise duty, aka road tax, and EVs are also exempt from the London congestion charge. Why do I mention all of this? Well, it's because every single one of these incentives or advantages that EVs enjoyed is going to be looked at very carefully if it hasn't been adjusted already. The plug-in car grant, for example, has now dropped from £5,000 to £1,500. And EV exemption from the London congestion charge is set to end in 2025. I say all of that to illustrate that nothing is ever set in stone. Changes have come about, which allows us to speculate about what other changes might come about, specifically when it comes to tax. So where does that leave the big one? Vehicle excise duty, the stuff they apply directly to fuel in the form of petrol, but not the fuel in the form of electricity. How does the government tax electricity for EVs? A reminder here that fuel duty earns big money for the Treasury. In 2021, it was £28 billion. As a rough guide, that's about £930 per household in the UK. Except if you got an EV, remember, you pay nothing. However, because of all the new electric cars being sold, the amount of money the government is making from fuel duty is obviously going to decline. If we all get EVs, it'll drop to nothing. Here's how it's unfolding so far. In the first 7 months of 2021, for example, 14% of all new cars sold in this country were pure electric, according to the SMMT. That's 127,492. A further 57,796 were plug-in hybrid. Those cars, if you use them properly, can go quite a long time without going anywhere near a petrol station. And those numbers for both EVs and PHEVs are only going to climb, especially because manufacturers now have to keep an eye on something called the Zero Emissions Vehicle Mandate, the ZEV mandate, from the start of 2024, next year. What is that? Well, that's when the government says to car makers, listen, by 2024, 22% of all the cars you sell have to be fully electric. And by 2028, we need 52%. And if you can't manage that, you gotta pay. By 2030, of course, all of us will be waving goodbye to new combustion engine cars altogether, and hybrids, we're gonna say bye-bye to those by 2035. So all this cash from fuel duty is under threat. Check this out. Even in the current 22-23 tax year, the Office for Budget Responsibility reckons the government is losing £600 million due to EV penetration. By the 26-27 tax year, the government will be out of pocket by around 2.1 billion. So how do they replace that lost fuel duty? Okay, there's a climate change committee, the CCC, funded by the government that wants us to start thinking about this stuff right now. And they've already produced a report, which I'll link to in the description down below. In a nutshell though, the CCC have, shall we say, noted that drivers have a massive loophole for refueling their EVs at home where they only pay 5% VAT as opposed to 20% VAT in public places. Here's a quote. All told, these differences mean that the transition to EVs is likely to leave a significant hole in the public finances if replacement taxation schemes are not introduced. They said asking drivers to make up this shortfall would be a sensible and fair policy. You see where we're going with this, don't you? EV owners will have to pay their share, and because we're all going to be EV owners eventually, any taxes lost through the loss of fuel duty will have to be found in some other way. The question is how? With fuel duty, it's easy. You buy petrol at a petrol station and the tax is applied to the price. Electricity is a lot harder to tax. For one thing, it's really easy to generate your own electricity at home with solar panels, for example. Even if you had a smart charger that clocked the kilowatts going into your car, you could just bypass all of that by plugging your car into a regular socket. The taxman can't tell the difference between your Tesla and a tea kettle. A plug's a plug. One possibility is that they simply increase the amount of road tax massively to make up for the lost revenue. Right now, EVs will pay £10 a year, and the most polluting cars like a Ford Mustang, etc., will pay around £535 a year. But cast your mind back to the figure I mentioned earlier. Every household is paying about £930 in fuel duty. So hypothetically, they could just increase road tax by £930 a year on top of what you already pay to make up the shortfall. But there's another option. The Transport Committee published a report in February 2022 and came up with road pricing. This is where they put a GPS black box inside your car, log the miles you travel, and charge you according to each journey. Out goes fuel duty, in comes pay per mile. With this, they could hypothetically set you a price depending on the type of car you drive, but mostly it'll be down to when and where and how you drive. Driving in the countryside might be cheaper than driving in the city, and they could dynamically raise pricing to discourage congestion or reduce pricing to encourage you to take a slightly quieter route. So everywhere would effectively become a congestion charge zone. Literally everywhere. They could also reduce tax for driving a cheaper car, so an electric Lambo pays more than an electric Skoda, for example. Now, while road pricing does make sense, it might be hard to convince the public. The problem is that they'll be able to track our movements, and people aren't generally a fan of those sorts of things. They'll know where you started your trip, what roads you took, how long you spent on the roads, and where you went. Who wants that? When road pricing was brought up 15 years ago for petrol cars, 1 million people signed a petition saying no thank you. It would take a brave politician in the middle of a cost of living crisis to tell us all, hey, you're all gonna have to upgrade to an electric car, but not only that, you're gonna have to pay every time you go on the road for every mile you drive, and no other country has this yet, by the way, but we have to, and oh, by the way, we're gonna track your every move with a black box. Vote for me. It's gonna go down like a lead balloon, isn't it? So, what's going to happen with fuel taxation? Something big and something fairly soon. We just don't know exactly what or exactly when. But stick with me and I'll keep you posted. Okay guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, drop them down below. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.